$54,000 a month from one loaded fries food truck. But here's the kicker. $38,000 of that vanishes before you even see a dime in profit. Where exactly does it go? And how did I turn a $500 experiment into $1.2 million in just 2 years? Let's break every dollar. Startup costs, food, labor, rent, the real margin, and the brutal payback period. So you can decide if this business is worth your time. All right, let's start with the top line. In a good month, this single food truck pulls in $54,000 in revenue. That's not gross after expenses. That's the raw sales number. And before you ask, yes, this is a real truck, real numbers, as in no, it's not on some tourist-heavy boardwalk. This is everyday street vending, festivals, corporate offices, local events, with a simple menu, loaded fries, burgers, and a signature barbecue sandwich. Now, here's the first hard truth. That $54,000, it's not what you take home. Not even close. Let's zoom in on the biggest leaks first, because if you're thinking about starting a food truck, you need to know where every dollar disappears before you even consider profit. The first and biggest killer? Startup costs. Most people think you need $50,000, $100,000 or more to get rolling. But what if I told you I started this entire operation for under $1,500? Pause for transition visual, side-by-side comparison of what people think versus what it actually cost. Okay, let's talk startup costs, because this is where most aspiring food truck owners get scared off. The internet will tell you that you need a brand new truck, commercial-grade equipment, a custom wrap, and a full staff to even open your window. And yeah, if you want to drop $100,000 on a dream, you can do that. But I didn't. Here's how I started this business for under $1,500 out of pocket. Breakdown of my actual startup costs. Used trailer, $1,200. Craigslist, no frills, but it had wheels and a fryer. Basic propane tank and regulator, $150. Secondhand commercial fryer, $0. I already owned one from a failed catering gig. Permits and licenses, $100. Local health department, nothing fancy. Initial food inventory, $50. Potatoes, cheese, bacon, oils, just enough to test the concept. That's it. No loan, no investors, no fancy branding. Just a $1,500 experiment to see if people would actually buy $10 loaded fries from a guy using a trailer and a single burner. And they did. In fact, in the first weekend, I cleared $800 in profit. Not bad for a $500 bet, right? But here's the catch. That $1,500, it didn't make the business profitable overnight. It just got me in the game. The real costs, the ones that eat into that $54,000 revenue, come next. Let's talk about where the money actually goes after you open your window. Transition visual, cost breakdown pie chart with food cost, labor, rent, spot fees, fuel, etc. All right, let's dive into the real meat of this business, where that $54,000 revenue gets carved up before you see a penny. If you're running a food truck, these are the 4 biggest cost buckets, and they will determine whether you're scraping by or actually making a living. Here's the exact breakdown from my books last month. First, food. This is the biggest line item for any food business, and loaded fries are no exception. For every dollar I bring in, 32 cents goes straight to potatoes, cheese, bacon, oils, sauces, everything that goes into a single order. On $54,000 in revenue, that's $17,280 just to keep the fryer full. Now, here's the kicker. That number isn't fixed. If I switch to premium cheese or organic bacon, it goes up. If I negotiate better contracts with my suppliers, it goes down. And trust me, I fought tooth and nail to keep this under 35%, because if it creeps up to 40%, my entire margin gets wiped out. So yes, food cost is a war, and I'm constantly tweaking my menu and sourcing to keep it in check. Next up, labor. This is where a lot of people underestimate the cost of running a business. I pay my crew $18 an hour, and on a busy day, I need 2 people on the truck, one to cook, one to handle orders. That's $36 per hour just in wages, and on a $54,000 month, that adds up to $13,500, and that doesn't include my own salary. Yes, I pay myself too. We'll get to that in a minute. Now, could I cut labor by working solo? Maybe for a weekend pop-up, but for consistent revenue, you need help, and good help isn't cheap. If you're not factoring in labor, you're not running a business, you're running a hobby that might pay some bills. Here's another hidden killer, rent. And I'm not talking about a restaurant lease. A food truck doesn't pay traditional rent, but we do pay for spots. Festivals, corporate events, private parties, they all charge fees to park your truck. Some are flat rates, $200, some are percentages, 10-15% of sales, and some are just highway robbery, looking at you, big ticket festivals. On average, I'm dropping $8,100 a month just to show up. And if you're thinking, I'll just find free spots, good luck. The free spots are the ones with 0-foot traffic. If you want sales, you pay to play. Then there's the operating costs, the gas to get to events, the propane to keep the fryer hot, the oil, the napkins, the random repairs when a burner goes out at 2 a.m. These add up fast. For me, it's about $2,700 a month. And again, this is the stuff most people don't think about until they're staring at a $300 propane bill after a single weekend. Pause for transition visual. Revenue versus cost bar graph showing $54,000 versus $41,580 in expenses. So let's recap. Out of $54,000 in revenue, $17,280 on food, $13,500 on labor, $8,100 on rent fees, $2,700 on operating costs. That's $41,580 gone before you even factor in your own pay, taxes, or reinvestment into the business. And that brings us to the real question. What's left? All right, let's get to the number you actually care about. Profit. After all those costs, food, labor, rent, fuel, what's left? First, let's talk about my salary. I pay myself $6,000 a month. That's not profit. That's my paycheck for running the business. And yes, I include that in my costs because if I weren't doing this, I'd be paying someone else to do it. So now we're at $47,580 in total expenses. Next, taxes. I set aside 20% of revenue for taxes, which is $10,800. And yes, that's a rough estimate. Consult your accountant, but don't skip this. Uncle Sam always gets his cut. So now we're at $58,380 in total costs against $54,000 in revenue. Wait, what? How is that possible? Here's the brutal math. On paper this month, I actually lost $4,380. But before you panic, let me explain. This is why you can't just look at one month's numbers. Some months I do $70,000 in revenue. Some months do $30,000. Some events pay 30% of sales and fees. Some pay a flat $200. Some months I get lucky with a big corporate gig that covers my entire food costs for the week. But here's the real margins, the average over the past 12 months. I take home 18% of revenue after everything. On $54,000, that's $9,720 in real profit. Not life-changing, but not nothing either. And when this truck hits a $70,000 month, that margin jumps to $12,600. That's the power of scalability in this business. Transition visual. Profit swing chart showing monthly variance from $4,380 to plus $12,600. Now let's talk about reinvestment. Every month, I set aside $5,000 for growth, new equipment, a second truck, marketing. Because if you're not reinvesting, you're just running in place. And that brings us to the most important number of all, the payback period. How fast do you get your $1,500 back? And should you even start this business? All right, let's talk payback, because this is where the rubber meets the road. How fast did I recoup my initial $1,500 investment? And more importantly, is this business right for you? First, the payback period. Remember, I started with $1,500 and cleared $800 in profit in my first weekend. By the end of the first month, I'd already tripled my initial investment. By the 3-month mark, I 10 times it. And by the end of year 1, I turned that $1,500 into $180,000 in profit. That's 12,000% return. Not bad for a side hustle. Now let's fast forward to year 2. With the profits from the first truck, I bought a second trailer, hired more staff, and expanded to 3 locations. That's how I hit $1.2 million in revenue in 24 months. But here's the catch. I didn't do it alone. I had savings to cover bad months. I knew how to run a business. And I treated this like a math equation, not a dream. So who should start this business? If you're okay with volatility, some months you'll crush it, some months you'll lose money, then this could work. If you can handle the grind, long hours, physical work, dealing with suppliers, permits, and customers, then the margins can be worth it. If you're looking for a set it and forget it passive income stream, keep scrolling. This isn't it. And who shouldn't start this? If you're not prepared to invest time and energy into marketing because 80% of food trucks fail from lack of customers, not bad food. If you can't handle the uncertainty because this business rewards hustle, not just talent. If you're not willing to track every dollar call, because if you don't know your food cost, your labor cost, and your fees, you'll bleed money without realizing it. Here's the bottom line. This business is simple, but it's not easy. The barrier to entry is low, but the barrier to profitability is high. If you can get your food cost under 35%, your labor under 25%, and your fees under 15%, you can make real money. If you can't, you'll be another statistic, a failed food truck owner who tried it for a few months and quit. But if you're still here and you're thinking, I can do better, then here's my challenge. Start small. Test the concept. Track every dollar. And if the numbers work, scale. Because that's how I turned $500 into $1.2 million in 2 years, and how you could do it too. Final visual. Should you start this business? Flowchart with yes/no branches based on cost control, hustle, and reinvestment. Real numbers on real businesses every week. If you want more breakdowns like this, food trucks, service businesses, the real margins behind the hype, hit subscribe. And if you're serious about starting this, drop a comment. What's your biggest cost concern? Food, labor, permits? I'll reply with what I do differently. See you in the next one.